What was that initial dream you had, and what made you pursue a PhD at Case Western University's prestigious Department of Organizational Behaviour?
It's very interesting. I guess 4 or 5 years ago, I did a podcast with Krister Lau, who does team coaching podcasts, and I called the podcast A Tale of Many Cities, because I originally started in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And it's only when I married and went to Cleveland, Ohio, that I got the idea of truly pursuing graduate studies, because Cleveland was not my home and my husband was in medical school. And I thought, well, what can I do here? And it's a university town. And there was something called the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland. So I kind of put it all together. I got my master's in clinical psychology, and then I went to the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland, which I had heard about because I was already there. People used to fly in for this, and people would say, well, what is that? And it's an experiential approach to understanding how to work with people. And yet it's still the best kept secret in town. So it's a way of using Gestalt principles from psychology to understand how people go about getting or not getting satisfaction in their world, personally, professionally. And many of the people that I had been impressed with at the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland, now I had already had a master's in clinical psych, but several of them went through the Department of Organizational Behavior. And when I first started, I didn't know what organizational behavior meant even. I thought, organizational behavior, now what is that? And I realized that these people that I had admired had something that I had never seen before. And what that was they could facilitate groups of people talking to each other. Now, I had always had a mindset, or an understanding that working with people was one-on-one. But when I actually saw people can facilitate people in groups, it was something like, it was fantastic to me. There was a different energy, different possibility, and it was also working really in an exciting way, not with clinical challenges, but working with life challenges, work challenges. So I made a jump from the clinical world, which was problems and coping, to the management world, which was managing and change. That's how I saw it. I saw the clinical world it's about how to cope and help people. And the management world was about how to manage and handle change. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? And at the same time, so this was now the 80s. And at the same time, I thought, I am a woman in the world, and just having a master's didn't seem adequate in the world of work. I noticed that when I was with colleagues and anyone who had a PhD, they could have been shorter than me. They could have been many different things, but they always felt taller. They always had that extra, doctor. And I thought, is that the requirement? So there was a little bit of what's the way to have a conversation and to really engage, and people would say, you bring value. And I thought that really studying and making a commitment to achievement. So because I had seen people really handle themselves so well, I thought, this thing called organizational behavior. I think there's something about that. And of course, people would always say, is it about being organized? And I would say, no, these are the most disorganized people possible, because they always say it has to be a mess before it is together. All these theorists that talk about, handling, changes, knowing how to handle chaos. So I became a fan of something called experiential learning, which is why how you and I know each other. I am a believer in how do we handle this moment? Or how do I recognize when people are working with me or they're distracted? So for me, it's all, and it's actually why I'm interested in mindfulness. It's how do we use this moment to really go forward? Either you go forward individually or we go forward together. How can I recognize? So like you're nodding and I'm going, okay, Shiyen's with me. I really get interested in how to recognize the moment. And so I think between Gestalt, which is what's the picture that we orient to, what's the meaning of what we're focusing on, and experiential learning, which was very big at Case, it's interesting that those two forces influenced me, that when I finished my degree, and this is now in the 90s, I remember I was working with a student. And this is now, I was at the Gestalt Institute. By this time, I was already faculty. I'd been invited to be faculty. We were running what was called postgraduate training. But we had a subgroup of people that were students at Case Western, which was only like 5 minutes away. It was in that area of town. And we had a student, very nice woman, who came to our program one day and looked terrible. I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I'm going to quit my program." I thought she meant our Gestalt program. I said, "Really?" She said, "I'm going to quit Case Western." I said, she'd been there for 2.5 years. I said, "Why?" She said, "It's an intolerable place, it's so demanding, it's so male-oriented. I'm just going to quit." And I said, "Oh, maybe we should go out for lunch." And she said, "You've never invited me for lunch before." I said, "I know." And then she said, "Well, why now?" I said, "Because now I think I can help you, and I don't know who else can." That was 1995. I helped her negotiate how to get her master's from that department. And she invited me to be on her dissertation. And I said, "Okay, but I'm not your therapist. I'm your coach. I'm going to do this. I don't want to do therapy on you. We're going to be very goal focused and, satisfaction focused." And that actually was the beginning, where I had said to people, I think that this idea of coaching has, the term is called legs, something to stand on. And they said, "Well, why is that? Why is it not a fad?" I said, "Because the world of therapy as we know it is not including the walking wounded. Life is so turbulent for people." We'd already been using the phrase navigating is like whitewater rafting. Navigating life is whitewater rafting. Change is, just increase, the pace of change is increasing. And how do we help people manage? And I actually, back in 96, I literally, you recognize someone who speaks your language, you recognize a family member, you recognize a like-minded soul. I recognize coaching as the umbrella where so much could happen that was useful. That's actually really how I began it, because Gestalt thinking had at least 50 years of theory to it. It had theory of resistance. It's really very close to, I would say, Robert Kegan's work on immunity to change. The Gestalt approach is, how do we recognize the moment? How do we recognize that it's not our history that we have to focus on? It's the way that we organize ourselves. And here's a word I'm going to use, and you've heard me use it before. How are we standing in the world that sends a message to us and others about our optimism, our confidence in ourselves, the language we are communicating about what we know and don't know. And all of this is, again, the world of Gestalt offers us a way to work with this at the individual level, at the interpersonal level, at the group level. And I thought, let's marry this to coaching, because coaching can be a way of partnering with people to assist them in moving towards their goals that are realizable, that are achievable, that are deliverable. And we are not an authority figure, we are a partner.